Hi, everyone. I am Spencer McNaughton, the founder of Uncloseted Media, and I feel so privileged and grateful to be here with an amazing panel of LGBTQ kids from across the United States. We have Gigi, Genna, Diamond, Luke, Lee, and Crow with us, and it's going to be a really interesting and fascinating conversation. I think there's so many stories told out there in the media that focus on queer kids, but that never include the voices of queer kids. So we're flipping the script and passing the microphone to the kids themselves. So, guys, thank you so much for being here and coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
I guess to start, I just want to know a little bit if you guys have any stories about what's it like to be an LGBTQ kid in school in your town today.
I personally go to an art school, so in a very liberal area. So it's good because it's like I've never really explicitly come out to anybody that I know, but it's just sort of a general acceptance that like, yeah, I see you, I get what you are. Nobody really says what they are, but like girls say girls, boys say boys, whatever, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it isn't easy. It's never easy, but it's I'm fortunate enough to have it and be in a space like this.
So when I came out to my dad, I was in like fifth grade when I came out. So, yeah, I told him, and then he was like really mad, like, oh, you're too young. You should wait till you're an adult. It was difficult. So I haven't told him about my sexuality since.
You don't bring it up, kind of thing.
No, never.
I have gotten called slurs in school before, unfortunately, when I came out, which is sort of expected. People just straight up talking about me behind my back. I didn't really care because that's their business and then my business is mine.
Paint a picture of one of those experiences that you had at school when you were called school slurs.
It was during my agriculture class, and I had came out to my whole class because that's like the main group of people I'm going to be with constantly throughout 4 years of high school. So I'm not going to go misgendered and dead named for all 4 years of high school.
Does having those people call you those slurs create a sense of fear when you're at school because you're worried about what could happen next?
Not exactly, because most of it was talk. It's when they actually start trying to come directly to me and harm me verbally or physically. That's when there's a problem there if it's constant. Because it does make me feel dysphoric, and I struggle with dysphoria a lot since I don't exactly have the resources to, transition. So that's definitely a struggle when it comes to stuff like that.
So Luke and I met because I was working at 60 Minutes and flew to Arkansas to do a story on his older brother who is trans and was suing the state's attorney general because they tried to block access to gender affirming healthcare, which I thought was the coolest thing I've ever seen a kid do in my life. Quick update, how is Dylan doing and what's he up to now?
He's doing good. He has a fiance now, actually. Yeah, they moved in together and he is just working. He's taking a break from school and then gonna go back next year doing something.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Tell him I say hi. I want to like turn a little bit to LGBTQ mental health, which is a tougher topic, and I want to just read you guys a few statistics on LGBTQ mental health right now and then have you guys respond. So, in 2022, a Trevor Project poll of 34,000 LGBTQ kids found that 73% reported feeling anxiety, 58% reported depression, 45% said they had seriously considered suicide. And for trans youth, the numbers are even higher than that. 1 in 5 had actually attempted suicide. Those numbers are way higher for LGBTQ people than they are for non-LGBTQ people. As a group of LGBTQ kids, I want to know from you guys, why do you think that is?
In my life, I have come across fair share of like homophobia and transphobia, and I do sometimes have anxiety from it, but it's not that big of a deal for me. But I see how it could be overwhelming towards to other people because it can be really scary at times. Like I've had some problems. I have trauma from homophobia. So I think that's saying something. And I feel like if I was someone else, if I was more susceptible to that kind of stuff, I feel like I would be depressed or maybe have suicidal thoughts. Like it could be very dangerous.
The social stigma is a big factor, but to a certain extent, like the political instability surrounding like LGBTQ plus rights, like I mean the right to for same-sex marriage is still so recent. And I feel like a lot of people may take for granted the fact that like it's a recent thing and that like certain protections are recent and not really super accepted by politicians who, for them, it's a new thing, but to us, it's like commonplace, you know? And so, like, that sort of dissonance between politicians who feel as though this is a newfangled concept, like being queer and being like open about that as youth. Whereas with younger people, it's just a thing that has been around longer to some, at least to me. It's like it's sort of been normalized since I was young, and I've only grown more accepting of it as I got older.
Genna, what do you think?
I went to a school that was closer to me, but was more in like the country. And the difference between the school I'm actually districted to and that school is like New York and Texas. I swear to God. Just literally a lot of ignorance, a lot of rednecks who, I mean, some of them I don't know if they've ever seen or interacted with a queer person in their life based on how they treated me. I was getting called slurs pretty much every day. Nearly got into a few fights because after a while, there's only so much someone can take.
Where did this happen and how did they come at you?
They're pretty much in the hallways, in class changes, in the courtyard, pretty much everywhere a teacher wasn't immediately present. Or where certain teachers weren't present because some teachers truly did not care.
How did that make you feel? Like, because that is hard to have that, like, it sounds constant and in every corner of a school where you're supposed to technically feel safe.
Throughout the school year, I never really found myself like wanting to hide more, but the annoyance did slowly start to turn into anger, which turned into like, I don't want to say rage, but somewhere in between anger and rage.
Diamond, you wanted to say something. I saw your hand up.
I used to experience a lot of violence due to me identifying as a boy and wearing dresses and colorful things and sparkles.
Gosh, I'm sorry. And I want to say, like, I know we're talking about a lot of tough things here, guys. So if anyone needs to take a break or anything like that, that's okay. Gigi, how are you doing?
Being an LGBTQ kid and living in a super suburban area, it's like difficult because a lot of the people in my grade and in my school overall are like homophobic, like really, really homophobic. I've been called slurs, I've been threatened for fights. I'm a lot more closeted now.
That's awful. I'm sorry, Gigi. I do want to ask about affirming parents. All your parents gave consent for you to be on this interview and take part in it. What does it mean to you to have parents who accept you?
It's definitely a big relief when you know that your parents will support you because at least you know that if you have nowhere else to go, then you have a bed to go to, you have food on the table, and they won't push you away. My dad, he's pretty supportive, so I am glad about that.
My parents were raised Southern Baptist, and it took a while to unlearn like all of that. Converting away from Christianity and into Judaism has really helped our family a lot. My dad was always more set in his ways, but I did finally get him to a point of like acceptance and tolerance, just not full-hearted support. Until almost a year ago, he had a massive heart attack and stroke. And that brain damage kind of reversed all the work we had done to get him to that like accepting, tolerant, supportive place. So now I have a mom who loves me unconditionally and a dad who calls me slurs whenever I mention that I'm gay, because he forgets that I'm gay. And then I tell him that I'm gay. And then he just goes through this whole revelation of, we're Christians, we don't do gay stuff. And we even have to remind him that we are not Christians. We have to remind him that he was to the point of willing to go to a pride parade just a year ago.
Well, I do want to address the elephant in the room, which is President Trump has been in the office for just over a week now officially. Trump did spend with the GOP upwards of $215 million on anti-transgender attack ads. He said he's going to get rid of so-called transgender insanity. And he's already passed many executive orders, some of them removing LGBTQ stuff and HIV stuff from the White House government pages. And obviously, you guys probably know there were hundreds of anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in the state legislatures last year, many of them targeting queer kids. How does it make you feel when you have a president who is attacking LGBTQ rights in such an aggressive and, I would argue, dehumanizing way, especially when you can't vote at your ages? Lots of hands up. Let's go Crow, Diamond, Gigi.
For me, it's definitely like very frightening, especially because right now I'm 16, and so like I'm going to become an adult over the course of his presidency, and I mean, quite honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to get like the gender affirming care that I need when I turn 18 as I had planned. And it's really difficult, especially to plan for the future and have that lack of surety that I thought that I would.
It just angers me that I feel like I just got some rights as a queer person, and now I'm seeing them being stripped away.
It also scares me because now, what if they try to take away the safe spaces we have in schools? Like, one of the only places we could actually learn about LGBTQ history or have a chance to meet other queer kids. And queer kids in schools are already scared enough to even join gay groups. I remember in freshman year when I first joined GSA, it was full of people. We were having fun. We did karaoke nights. We were vibing. And comparing it to now, we're lucky if we get at least 5 people showing up.
Why do you think it's become less attended?
Likely because students are becoming a lot more conservative towards themselves and keep things to themselves in order for their own safety. Because I've had friends who have done that. I have friends who are like, I trust you with this information, but please don't tell anybody else. And joining a group like GSA to a lot of people means coming out in some sort of way. So definitely that could be a factor.
In terms of the whole Trump presidency, you asked how we felt. In a word, just powerless. I mean, honestly, I don't know what I can do, especially considering that sometime I'll be evaporating because there are only 2 sexes according to our orange leader. And that is an executive decree. So as a non-binary person, I no longer legally exist.
Well, who in this call, right, by a show of hands, who in this call uses any pronouns other than the ones that match the sex they were assigned at birth? So for you guys, how does it make you feel that in the eyes of the federal government now, they don't believe that? They don't think that's real. They don't accept that. Because that is part of the executive order that Genna mentioned that just passed last week.
I I don't know. It's just sort of it's frustrating. It feels irrational and unwarranted to do that, to like remove X gender markings and to like legally say that male and female are the only genders and that it begins at conception, which already is incorrect wording and inaccurate wording. I don't see a reason behind it. And it just, I personally feel like it comes more of from a place of hate and a place of appeasement to more extremist views rather than any sort of like safeguard against like society or any sort of moral values.
Definitely, what you said. There is no point in that decree other than hatred. Alongside the new law that transgender people already are not or will not be able to serve in the military. That does not serve this country. If anything, it does the opposite. Why would you actively reduce the number of troops just because you don't like their gender? I mean, that is self destructive at its finest.
I also want to add that as LGBTQ kids, you already don't feel heard enough. You don't feel like your parents are supporting you, or like other people don't support you, or teachers, students, or society in general is like looking down upon you. You don't feel heard because you can tell people your pronouns, you can tell people your preferred name, and they just completely dismiss that. So already feeling unheard, now the government is completely just going, screw you, you don't exist anymore, and you don't get to have this. That makes everything 100 times worse.
So I don't know if you know this, but just before we got on this call, President Trump signed another executive order aimed at essentially blocking gender affirming care for transgender people under age 19. Here's the quote from the president in a statement. It is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures. And the order says that applies for prepubertal blockers, for hormones, and for any surgeries. I want to get your guys, as we're in a really unique position to be able to talk to 6 LGBTQ kids right now, your immediate reactions to that.
That's dangerous in a way, for because there are like young adults who are 18 or even below 8, like 18 and lower. There are people who are already on hormones and who are already like going through these changes. Taking that away definitely has health risks to them, because now they have something that they are continuously on, that their body is used to, and now that is being ripped away from them just because of a law that's coming out of the blue.
It could be medically dangerous, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I feel like it really just loops back to what I just said, where it doesn't feel like this is coming from a place of any sort of logical standpoint.
It's just making me a lot more concerned for other kids out here because it's not just now kids getting discriminated against and feeling like they don't belong. It's that they actually are getting these things that make them feel like themselves, getting stripped away. And like when I look at my brother and how much like these medications and surgeries have helped him and how much he can feel more safe and accepting of himself. If other kids can't get this, then they're not gonna be able to feel what this like, I don't know, happiness and acceptance of themselves is gonna feel like.
And what did you
Mhm.
learn about being trans and the necessity for gender affirming healthcare by watching your brother go through that journey himself?
I just saw more of him. Like obviously I knew him because he came out when he was, I don't know, 13, 12, 13. It's just like these past 7 years, he's just like grown up more and more and more and been able to like really see what he's like, what he wants to be, and like how much he's been able to grow with like being himself and I don't know, growing into his own skin. He's more himself and I just see more of him.
And now he's engaged and happy and living his best life, it sounds like.
Yeah.
When people, adults poo-poo the idea of gender affirming healthcare for kids, what do you think that's about?
A lot of like politicians, especially not liking gender affirming care, comes from a place of disinformation or misinformation, because a lot of the rhetoric involving like gender affirming care for minors is under the impression that minors are undergoing surgery or minors are undergoing hormone replacement therapy, when in reality, prepubescent children only go on hormone blockers typically, and then pubescent children will typically go on like hormone replacement therapy, but no surgeries are really ever performed on minors. And if they are, it's typically older minors in America, like 16, 17. But nobody is doing top surgery or bottom surgery or any sort of gender affirming surgeries on 10-year-olds, on children. I understand why people might be scared, but the phrasing of like mutilation and of ruining bodies it's rooted in that misinformation. And so I feel like only through proper like through informing people on what gender affirming care is and what it can be is how people will learn to understand that it's essential to people.
Also feel that dysphoria plays a large part in it, but like Crow said, it's not like they're taking middle schoolers and putting them in the hospital just like, here you go. Here's your transition. That's not how it works. It's an entire process and not everything is immediate. And there are a lot of trans people and a lot of non-binary people who don't transition at all because I personally believe as a transgender person, you can be transgender without getting surgeries.
It is terrifying that I could be forced to not find something that works for me because Trump thinks that everyone who receives gender affirming care wants to mutilate their bodies.
What age did you realize you were LGBTQ? Like, can you take me back to the first moment? How old were you? And what was it that was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm gay, or I think I'm trans, or I think I'm fill in the blank kind of thing?
It was probably around middle school. It was kind of everyone was waiting for me to realize that my family was kind of like already knew, and it was just like waiting for me to realize. And I don't know if it was a certain thing. It was just like we have so much access to information on the internet and social media. So it's like I think it's just seeing more topics of being more open and like more social media. I just kind of saw it and realized that maybe this would be more me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, oh, social contagion through YouTube, you know, these types of things. And I completely disagree with that argument. It's so good that folks, especially in kind of maybe rural or more remote places in the United States, have access to more representations. They can see themselves and then they're not closeted until they're 60.
I express myself in a certain way and I present myself in a certain way, but I didn't quite understand if, if my feelings were coming from like, do I just like presenting myself like this? And because it made me feel a little bit more confident in like my identity, or do I like presenting myself like this because I feel like a different gender? And then ultimately led to like a lot of self-reflection as to, like how I classify myself and how I saw myself. Um, and I must have been about 11. At that point, I already knew that I was bi, but I think it was 11 that I very confidently was like, I'm not quite in like either gender box.
Well, look, I want to do a little hand raise moment, okay? I'm going to read a statement to you guys and raise your hand if it applies to you. So first, none of you are, we kind of talked about this, but none of you are voting age. If you were 18, raise your hand if you would have voted for Donald Trump. Raise your hand if you would have voted for any candidate other than Donald Trump. Got it. Raise your hand if the current political climate in the United States has affected your mental health. Wow, everyone, okay. Raise your hand if the current political climate in your state has ever forced you and your family to consider leaving your state or even the country. Wow, 5 of you. That is intense. Raise your hand if you're at the end of the day happy you're LGBTQ identifying. Raise your hand if you feel like you have a supportive group of friends and family in your corner. Love it. I want to shift and to a more positive question, and it's going to sound like a cheesy question, but stay with me. So I think everyone, we talk a lot about in the queer community, safe spaces, right? And right now in America, schools aren't always safe spaces because there's certain laws and bills being passed. I want to know, like, as an LGBTQ kid, or even just as a human being, what's your safe space?
In my room, I have a canopy bed with like colorful curtains that I just like close so that I can just be like all comfortable with all my blankets and cushions. That, and at my school, one of the teachers made Rainbow Club, which is a gay safe space, like a gay club where you can come to chat with other LGBTQ people and just have fun and like connect and share things.
The high school I'm going to, I just went to go take a tour of it last Thursday. Basically they have a GSA, like the Gay
Gay
Straight
Straight
Alliance,
Alliance.
and there's 2 LGBTQ teachers in my high school that I'm going to, which are the choir teacher and the band teacher. They're married. So I feel like I can talk to them.
Why I'm proud to be queer. We make incredible music, dude. I mean, have you ever heard Chapel Rowan?
I was just about to mention
Okay,
that.
yes, literally.
For me, something I love about being in the LGBTQ community is just like knowing myself and knowing who I am and being confident in that and like receiving like love and support from other people who also see that in me, knowing myself for who I am. And only through being in the queer community did I like truly experience that.
One of my favorite things would probably be like just like the immediate family and community that you have, and just like being able to be yourself without having any judgment from anybody. Like they're not going to judge you for who you are.
I totally agree with that. There's a solidarity among queer people, I think, at its best. Last but not least, Miss Gigi.
So being on here, like, it meant a lot because I get to meet people who have similar experiences, are also queer, and are super cool overall.
Well, as I said before, thank you all so much for coming on, especially as LGBTQ rights are in pretty major turmoil in the United States. I think it is an extremely brave and courageous thing for you guys to do as openly LGBTQ kids coming on to talk to a national news publication. So kudos, hat tip to all of you. You should be super proud of yourselves. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Yeah.